So good day everyone. So here we go again with another new lesson for today. So last time we talked about the acculturation model. So we are still in the theories and models for language acquisition. So that model was more or less more focused on the second language acquisition. And before that, we talked about the behaviorist theory. And that is more or less connected to the first language acquisition. So this time, we have cognitivism or the cognitive theory of language acquisition. So, here, this is a language acquisition theory by John Piaget. So, let's talk about this. So, cognitivism. So it emerged as a response to behaviorism, focused on the inner mental activities of human beings to understand how people learn. Behaviorists saw humans as programmed animals. Cognitivists viewed them as rational beings. Language acquisition is viewed in light of the child's cognitive development. So according to this, cognitivism was created or was born as a reply to behaviorism. And as stated this, it focuses more on the inner mental activities of human beings. Why? Because from the word cognitivism, we have their cognitive or the mind, the brain. So according to this, again, this theory was born due to the theory of behaviorism. So for behaviorism or behaviorists, so they see other people as programmed animals. So like computers, they are already programmed with the ability to speak, to do things, to grow, develop, and so on and so forth. Well, for cognitivists, they view people or other people as rational beings, as beings able to think properly. It's not just because it's already hardwired or already programmed. It's because we are able to think logically, to think deeply, and so on and so forth. Again, cognitivism connected to our brains, to our minds. So according to this, according to cognitivism, language acquisition, the ability to learn language, is viewed in connection to the child's development in the part of their cognitive development. So again, this language acquisition theory, cognitivism, was stated or theorized by John Piaget. So according to John Piaget, language acquisition for Piaget is a mental and emotional process. Piaget linked the development of language in a child to the child's cognitive development. He believed that a child must have the understanding of a concept before he can verbalize it. For example, if a child says, "This car is bigger than that one," therefore he must have the concept of size in his mind before commenting. So, based on this, we know that according to Piaget, the ability to learn language is both a thinking process and a emotional process. So, mental and emotional process. And according to him, the development of language within a child is also connected to the development of the child's ability to think, to learn. So, cognitive development. For him, a child is able to understand something first before being able to speak it aloud or to verbalize it. So like the example says, the child was able to say that comment But of course, before that child was able to say that comment, he was first able to think of that comment first. So, understanding first the idea before being able to say it. So, yes, thinking first before doing or speaking it. So, Piaget regarded cognitive development in a child as a prerequisite for language acquisition. He believed that language was a way of reflecting a child's thought process and that language did not contribute to development of thinking. He argued that cognitive development preceded linguistic development. Okay, so according to this, for Piaget, before a child learns to speak, a child learns first to think or to understand. So, as stated here, a prerequisite, a requirement. So, according for Piaget, before a child has the ability to acquire a language, he must first have the ability to think or to understand, or his mind or his brain must first be developed first before learning a language. So, it is a requirement. So he believed that a language was a reflecting of child's thought process and it did not contribute to development of thinking. So since according or for Piaget, the first thing that needs to develop first is the child's thinking ability before his or her speaking ability, then the speaking ability of a child is reflecting how well or how good is the child's thinking ability. And the development or the rate of how a child learns to speak does not contribute to the rate of how the child learns or how his mind develops. And so again, just repeating, he argued that cognitive development preceded linguistic development. So for him, he really stand by his opinion that a child learns first to think before speaking. Or yes, it is a requirement before any child can learn a language. The child must first learn to understand, think, know what is a concept, no concepts or ideas. So according to Piaget, children learn their initial rational constructs through the environment, of course by interacting with other people. Children develop language through a combination of schemas. So what are schemas? So these are concepts for how to act and respond to the world. As these schemas gradually develop and become more complex in mind, language and vocabulary process in order for the child to handle the new schemas. So, according to Piaget, where does a child learns to construct his ideas, his rational ideas? It is from the environment, from the people around the child. So, based on what other people are saying, doing, while with the child. So, the child develops his or her language through this interaction with the people around him. And since the child is learning from those people, he is able to learn different schemas. And again, schemas are the ideas for how to act or respond to the world. So, let's say the child is always with the person who is very kind. So, by that, he will understand or he will learn that what to say or how to act kindly on a given situation or to a specific person. How? by learning from that person always near that child. And of course, as time passes by, many people will interact with the child, so different schemas will merge and continue to develop, become much more complex. Therefore, helping develop both the language and the vocabulary of the child. Why or how? Why? Is because as the child learns new ideas, new concepts from the new situations, from the things around him or her, so he needs to think of different ways, um, different options to say, to do, or different ways to react in his mind. And let's say different ways to say in a specific situation. And since he's thinking first, the different ways to say or to apologize, for example, so he is going to recall the different experiences that he was able to learn from the people around him, making his vocabulary much more bigger. Why? Because he is trying to remember, or what were the words that mother or father used when they're trying to apologize, when they're talking to this person. Okay, so I'll use it on my own sentence. So how would it be? Like this, like that, and so on and so forth. So that's how the child develops his or her language and as vocabulary as well when uh, his schemas or the things he know are also becoming more and more complex as well. So, Piaget's cognitive theory has stages, different stages. So, according to Piaget was the first to say that children reason and think differently at different stages in their life. He believed that all children universally progress through 4 different and distinct stages of cognitive development. Language in children develop gradually as they move on to the next stage. So yes, as we age, we become much more mature, therefore we think and reason differently in each stage. And also, according to Piaget, every children undergoes these stages. So even if I'm a Filipino child, you are a English or American child, you are a Japanese child or Korean child, we all undergo these stages. And each stage is a requirement first before going to the next stage, as stated by the last part. So language in children develop gradually as they move on to the next stage. So from one stage, slowly developing, becoming more advanced, and then entering the new stage. So let's know the different stages of cognitive development according to John Piaget. So according to him, we have 4 stages of cognitive development. So we have the sensory motor stage, the preoperational stage, the concrete operations stage, and the formal operations stage. So moving first at the sensory stage, so according to him, it begins at birth and continues up to age 2. So here, children learn about physical objects and are concerned with motor skills. So when we say motor skills, our physical abilities, our ability to grasp, to move around, to use our body. So when children in this stage see a new object, they shake it, throw it, chew it, or put it in their mouth. Why? To simply understand the characteristics of the objects. So here, again, cognitive, using the brain. So here in the sensory motor stage, we as children, are much more focused on physical objects, the things that we can see, we can touch, and our ability to move around, to use our bodies. And we think or we get information, let's say we know that this pillow is soft. How do we know this pillow is soft? By touching it, playing with it, biting it, chewing it, or even licking it. So we use our body senses in order to grasp a concept, to grasp an idea of what this object is. So this stage is marked with concept formation. Around age 1, children learn the concept of object permanence. So example, an object continues to exist for the children even if it is out of their sight. No linguistic development is seen at this stage except for our language acquisition stages, babbling, and cooing. So, the focus of the sensory motor stage is our ability to gain knowledge, to form information. So, concept formation. And at this stage, during especially age 1, we learn object permanence. We understand that even if we cannot see an object, we know that there is an object there. For example, you show a baby a ball, then you put a handkerchief. So if the baby is younger than 1 year old, so they will cry, saying or meaning the meaning of their cry is that the ball is no longer here in the world, or the ball is gone, because they cannot see the ball. But when they get to around age of 1 year old, so if you show a ball, then you put a handkerchief over the ball, the child or the baby still knows that the ball is right in front of them. It is just hidden. So they are able to form ideas already, form concepts of what's happening around them. So again, there's still no language development in this stage, only babbling and cooing. Next stage, we have the preoperational stage. So according to this stage, it begins at around age 2 and goes up to age 6 or 7. This stage is marked by language acquisition, and children develop ability to think of symbols and form words from ideas and vice versa. Children also begin to understand concepts of time and space and addition and subtraction. So the preoperational stage, according to this, is that it starts at age 2 or around age 2 up to age 6 or 7. So here we already have the start of language acquisition. So this is the starting point of a child in learning a language. So according to this, the child already knows to think of symbols and form words from ideas. For example, he's thinking of food. So he's able to say something which he meant by food. So much more developing. So in the first stage, he's just gaining information. Now, in the pre-operational stage, he is able to think already. Although it's still quite limited. But still, he's able to think. And since he's able to think, he is somewhat able to say, according to John Piaget. Remember, according to John Piaget, cognitive development is first before language development or language acquisition. So in this stage, children are no longer bound to physical objects only. So here in this stage, they are also now able to understand, to gather information of what is time, what is space, and also information about numbers, mainly addition and subtraction. So in this stage, children focus more on concrete physical situations and have difficulty in handling abstract concepts. Still, language for children at this stage is less. Having verbose conversation with children is not going to help children at this stage start recognizing shapes and words ascribed to the shapes. So, yes, the children at the preoperational stage are able to understand abstract concepts already, such as time and place or space. But still, similar with the first stage, they are still much more focused on the things that they can see and they can touch. So, concrete physical situations. And still, even though this is the stage in which their language acquisition starts, they are still having a hard time learning language. As stated here, language for children at this stage is still less. So even if you converse, you have baby talk with the children in this stage, it will have only little effect in helping them recognize shapes and the words connected to these shapes. Next, we have the concrete operational stage. So according to this stage, it starts at the age of 6 or 7 and goes up to the age of 11 or 12. And according to this stage, children are able to group things in logical order according to their names, numbers, or sizes. Children develop a much more logical and reasonable language system. So they begin to understand the concepts of other people as well as convey their own ideas and views. So according to this, the concrete operations stage, first, power of H2O. So according to this, the start of the concrete operational stage is from 6 to 7 up to 11 or 12. And in this stage, so their minds, their thinking ability is developing already. In how or in what way? In a way that they are able to order things, organize things in a much more logical order. For example, a child will organize his toys based on size. Oh, this is small like a mouse. This is bigger like a dog, and this is the biggest like a door, and so on and so forth. Or by numbers or by sizes. And here in this stage, the children are able to develop much their language system. They are able to speak much more logically and much more reasonably as well. How so? Because in this stage, they are not only able to grasp the ideas, information, physical information, abstract information such as time, space, and emotions, but also they're able to grasp the concepts or ideas of other people. They are now a bit open-minded. And also, they're able to express their own ideas and views of life. So as you can see, they're able to express themselves already. And of course, how can you express yourself? Of course, saying things in a reasonable order and in a logical order. So what's your reason? Why did you do that? And what's your product as well? So they are able to express themselves more clearer in this concrete operations stage. So the children also begin to understand much complex abstract things such as mathematics problem solving. Yet at this stage, a child can do mental operations but only with real concrete objects, events, or situations. So, the child was in this stage, the child already knows many things. And still developing his mind, he is now starting to learn or understand complex things, such as solving mathematical equations. Let's say multiplication or let's say just addition, subtraction of fractions. But they can only do this complex mathematical problem solving if they have concrete examples. For example, let's say a half apple. Someone will need to show them a half apple plus a whole apple, or how many apples do a person have. So they will count that concrete object. So 1.5. So that person has 1.5 complex mathematical equations, but only with concrete examples. But still, we can see here how much the child is developing in terms of their thinking ability. Moving to the last stage, the formal operation stage. So according to this stage, the final stage, which begins from around age 11 or 12 up to the age of 15. So many new capabilities are developed in a child at this stage. So a child is able to use language fully by the end of this stage and is able to provide reasons logically. So the stage is marked with the child thinking and communicating in a more adult-like manner. So the range of this stage is from 11 or 12 up to 15. And here, since the brain of the child is developing rapidly, he's gaining new abilities, new talents. And here, since he has experienced many schemas, he experienced gathering many kinds of information, he is able to learn language or to use language to the fullest, such as like an adult, to speak logically, explain reasonably like an adult. But this is more or less focused on first language acquisition, not in second language acquisition. So when we say he's able to use language fully or to the fullest, what we mean is use language in terms of the mother tongue language. Okay. So, moving. So, the language system in children of this stage is developed completely except for those children who suffer from autism or some other mental dysfunction. The child at this stage has the concepts as well as the language to support the concepts he has. This stage can be referred to as the linguistic maturation stage. So this is the final stage in which the child completely matures in learning the mother tongue language. So first language acquisition, except for, of course, children with disabilities or with different disabling circumstances or situations, such as children with autism or other children with mental dysfunction. Papers. So overall, according to Sophi J, he argued that language basically represents a skill or symbolic representation gradually acquired through the stages of cognitive development. So according to this, Piaget said that language or the development of language is basically the ability of how a child states his ideas, his concepts, yun nga, symbolic representations. Remember, our ideas, our thoughts are forms of symbols. So how can we represent those symbols? By giving it specific words. For example, I have the word, or I am thinking of the word of my eye, yung ating mata, ano. So what is the word that will represent this eye? So of course, the word eye, ano. So this is acquired through the slow but gradual development through the 4 cognitive stages. So Piaget's view is in contrast to Chomsky's theory of universal grammar. So we will talk about that briefly in some other lesson. It is very short lang naman. So stating that, but still it is Noam Chomsky, so more or less it is the language acquisition device in which we are all innate. Everyone has an innate ability for language. Ano? So stating that a general mechanism, yan nga, LAD, language acquisition device, in the human brain accounts for language acquisition, which he believed is far too complex to be acquired simply through experience and general cognitive processes. Oops. So Piaget believes that a child learns language by actively participating in the learning process. So here in the child is an active learner. And we can easily see this in the first stage. So the information gathering stage. So how does a child gathers or create concepts of information? So by being active. Like my example earlier, so how will I know that the pillow is soft? By touching it, playing with it, licking it, or biting it. So I am doing something actively. So I am part of the learning process, or my actions are part of the learning process. Ano? So, yes, for Piaget, the child is an active learner. Ano? Or has an active role in the learning process. So, he was of the view that adults should assist the child by providing appropriate props and vocabulary suiting the child's interest in order to facilitate the learning. So, according to him, adults should help children learn. How? By giving props, yun nga, using concrete items, apple, toys, and so on and so forth. And using vocabulary based on the interest of the child. So for example, you want the child to learn counting, and the child likes Superman or Batman. So how many Supermans do I have in my hands? So you have, let's say, you're going to use action figures or dolls of Superman or Batman, so that the child will have interest. And because he is interested, so he will be really counting. Therefore, there will be active learning. Ano? So, Piaget recommended that adults should not intervene in the learning process without necessity. So, let's say the child is already learning. The child is counting, 1 Superman, 2 Superman, 3 Superman. Then the child forgot the number 4. So, if the child is having a hard time, according to Piaget, we should not butt in. Let the child think, even if it is for an hour, for 2 hours, or let's say half a day. He is thinking of what's the next number. We should not butt in unless the child asks to help, unless the child already needs help. So, unless it is necessary to help. if there is no need to help the child, we should not help the child, or we should not butt in. Let the child think and think and think until they learn. So that is according to Piaget's recommendation. So it is evident that Piaget's theory suggests some link between cognitive development and language acquisition, and also explains the order in which certain aspects of language are acquired. But, we have here the word but. Piaget's theory does not explain why language emerges in the first place. So according to this, the theory or the cognitive theory of Piaget suggests the link between the thinking ability and the gaining of language of a child. And it also explains some parts of how a child learns. But still, it does not fully explain where language comes from in the first place. Okay? So, that would be all for today. I may create a second video about some just key terms in the cognitive or cognitivism of John Piaget. But for now, that's all. Thank you for listening. I hope that you understand the lesson. And of course, if you have questions, don't be afraid to ask questions. So, thank you, goodbye, and have a nice day.